as we have been reading through the Gospel of Luke and exploring this journey of Jesus as he's emerged into public ministry, there's something wonderful that happens to us, for it is much like our relationships with the people in our everyday lives. The more time we spend with them, and the longer we journey with them, and the more we listen, and the more we share, the closer we can become, and the more we might understand. That, in fact, the more time we spend with someone special, the more likely that person is to open and reveal to us something that maybe is withheld from the rest of the world. The more time we spend with Jesus, the more time he spends with his disciples, the more that is revealed. And here in the midst of the gospel, we are seeing the true heart of Jesus and his mission and his purpose. May we be enlightened and enriched and blessed by what we hear and what we see from him. A short passage today. I'll invite you to read aloud the words in white. I'll read those in yellow. Then Jesus turned to his disciples and said privately, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see.
For I tell you that many prophets and kings wanted to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it."
There is something particularly profound about that statement at this particular point in the ministry of Jesus. In part, yes, people of times past perhaps did not see and hear what these disciples were able to see and hear. Though the more you reflect upon the ministry of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, the more you see of what God had been telling God's people for centuries. The core message is pretty simple, pretty clear, and seemingly pretty easily corrupted by humanity. Nothing incredibly new here, other than the messenger is perhaps a bit more credible than those of ages past. But the message that Jesus has been portraying about caring for the least first, about forgiving, about grace, about human beings being more important than rules and regulations, all of these messages of how we care for one another have been true for ages. People who wanted to see it could have seen it. People who wanted to hear it could have heard it. Many did not. The profound thing about the placement of this passage at this point in time is that we've just seen another example of Jesus explaining himself to his disciples. And they did not understand what he was saying. They could not grasp his truth, his spirit. He says, "Blessed are your eyes because you see it. Blessed are your ears because you hear it." But we also know, even though you don't quite fully understand yet, blessed are your eyes because we take for granted what we see in our daily life and do not understand completely how much of a blessing it is to be who we are, where we are, experiencing God's blessings in whatever way we're experiencing them. We do not understand what it would be like to be the other person who cannot see and cannot hear and does not know the faithfulness of God. We perhaps too easily focus on what's been lost and what's been lacking and take for granted what is available and constantly present. And perhaps sometimes we do need to think about the other person in order to realize our own blessings. But even these disciples, let alone the kings and prophets of ages past, let alone the rulers of the temple in Jesus' day, let alone the countless generations of believers who, since Jesus, kind of got it, but couldn't fully grasp it, including us. We kind of get it. We don't fully grasp it. I have to wonder what it is about us that sometimes prevents us from seeing what's right in front of us, or hearing the truth that is offered to us. And I've been thinking about this for some time. And so I'm going to share with you some of the core message I offer when I'm meeting with clients who are trying to think about or trying to recover from drug or alcohol use. People who've been through the court system and asked to get counseling, and they come to me. It's the kind of thing I've been teaching to such folks for years and years. But it's true of all people in all situations who sometimes cannot grasp the truth in front of them. You know, we tend to be kind of quick to point finger at people and blame them for their blindness and deafness. But as it turns out, our brains are somewhat programmed to help us not face unpleasant truths. Sometimes it helps us a great deal. Sometimes it is a curse to us. But I run through a short list of what the people I study call self-deceptions. They consider it to be a primary symptom of compulsive behavior, whatever it might be. The refusal to accept reality and therefore make a change. How does that happen? Well, it happens because our brains run us through a system of responses that pretty much try to allow us to keep doing what we know, to do what we're comfortable with, to do what we think is still working for us, even well past the time when it's really not working for us. Self-deceptions. The first one they list, a very popular word, you'll be really familiar with it. The first self-deception is denial. Denial, I explain to people, it's not the fact that I know something and I refuse to tell you that I know it. It's not that simple. Denial is the fact that even though all of you may see that my life is getting out of control, I just don't see it at all. I'm not lying to you. I'm not pretending. I'm fine. I appreciate your concern. But this is good. I'm okay. If you've ever lived with or been a close friend to someone who was in a denial stage, it's incredibly frustrating. I'm just trying to help you save yourself from yourself. And you know, that's real nice of you. But I'm good. You know, I don't know where you picked up this stuff, but, go peddle it someplace else. But thanks very much for thinking of me. I just don't see it. Breaking through denial for many people is an incredibly painful experience. I have to experience one thing after another, after another, after another, and then somehow put it all together that this is all related to my compulsive behavior. My gambling, my binging Netflix, my drug or alcohol use, my work habits, any number of those compulsive behaviors. It takes a long time for some people to put together in their own minds, this is all connected. And in the meantime, all you can do for your friends or family is just keep telling them the truth as you see it. Eventually, I might break out of denial. I put together the pieces and I start thinking, maybe that behavior is causing some trouble. Maybe something needs to change. Maybe I need to see the reality that other people see and I just don't get. And then I move into the next self-deception, which is called repression. The way I describe the difference is, in denial, you all see this hand in front of me. I don't. I don't really know why you're so worried about it. It's not there. In repression, okay, I see it over here. I'm going to try to ignore it. In repression, when you come to me and you say, hey John, I've been hearing some stories, kind of worried about you. And I say, think the Cardinals will pull it together next season? What about this Andrew Luck? Is he ever really going to pan out? Anything. Let's talk about anything other than this truth, because I'm trying very hard to pretend it's not there. I'll change the subject. Early on, it might be very simple. A little bit later on, I might get more defensive, aggressive about it. And you would notice that. Why don't you just mind your own business? And there might be some other words thrown in the middle. I'm trying to pretend that everything's okay. Will you please leave me alone, right? Is what's happening. Repressing things requires a great deal of psychic energy. It takes up a lot. It distracts you a lot from your other tasks that you have to perform. And we repress all kinds of unpleasant news, right? Unpleasant realities, the changes that we don't really want to see and admit. Not just the response to our own compulsive behavior, but the losses, the way society has changed, the way life in the church has changed, the way our family has changed, the way our marriage has changed, the way our spouse has changed, the way I have changed, right? Not unusual for us to still try to do something that we did 40 years ago, thinking we can still do it. Let's repress that and just kind of keep rolling along. Eventually we get tired of repressing and we move into the next self-deception, which is called rationalizations. My sources tell me that as soon as you rationalize something, it's confirmation that even you know it's not working for you. You don't rationalize things that are fine. I got up, I went to the grocery store, bought some groceries, came home, cooked some lunch. I don't have to rationalize that. I woke up Saturday morning, I know I cashed my paycheck on Friday sometime, I don't know where the money is. Eventually you have to try to rationalize. Where did it go? Maybe I remember, maybe I don't. That's the fourth girlfriend that's broken up with me in 6 months. What's wrong with all them women, right? It must be something wrong with them. It must be some other thing. We start rationalizing. The problem with rationalization is there's always a kernel of truth in there. Well, it's not like I'm robbing a bank, right? It's not like I'm as bad as these people who are beating up folks. It's not like I took a gun into the casino and shot up the place. You know, I'm only driving 50 in a 40 zone. I'm only 10 minutes late for work. I've only missed work twice this month. Explain, rationalize. Well, you know, I'm having a tough time. I deserve a break. You know, I know all kinds of other people do all kinds of this and all kinds of worse. We rationalize, we explain, we defend, we excuse. You catch yourself rationalizing any of your behaviors, it's time to sit down with somebody and say, okay, what do I not know? What am I not really faced yet? What can you tell me about what changes I've ignored or what changes I need to make? And if you can't do that, it'll be one of the most courageous and wisest things you've ever done in your life. Because generally speaking, the rationalizations continue and we move through them all until finally we get to another self-deception, and this one is wonderful. I'm tired of explaining my behavior, so I go into hiding. You know what hiding is? Well, I'm not going to go see Alan because Alan's always giving me a hard time about what I'm doing in my life, and I'm tired of explaining it, so I'm just going to ignore him. He calls, voicemails I ignore. I'm going to quit going to places where I might run into Alan. I'm going to hide from people so that I can keep hiding from reality, so that I can just keep engaged in the self-destructive compulsive behavior, the denial, the fantasy that I've drawn. Sometimes I hide by isolating from everybody who's trying to help me keep healthy. Sometimes I hide with people who are engaging in the same compulsive behavior. My experience with a great number of, for example, methamphetamine users, was that they would get to a point where they ignored their family and what used to be their friends and anybody that was concerned about their behavior, and they hung together in groups of people who were also using, perhaps manufacturing, dealing, whatever. People who were not going to give them a hard time. So much to the point that I've known dozens of people who would tell me, everybody I know uses this stuff. They weren't lying. Those were the only people they knew anymore, because they'd gone into hiding with them. So imagine yourself, it's like being on top of a steep hill, rolling down a hill and accelerating with no brakes. Nobody is there to say, you need to slow down. Nobody is there to say, this is getting dangerous. Nobody is there to say, man, I love you and I hate to see you do this to yourself. Nobody is there. Inevitably, there's a wreck. Inevitably, there's some sort of crash, either because of police intervention or a trip to the hospital. Sometimes a person comes to see it on their own, but usually this is where folks start hitting bottom, when things become so painful that they finally wake up and they see what's going on, and they come to that conclusion, this has got to change. And there's one more self-deception waiting for them. This is, if you've ever had much involvement with nicotine, or if you've known people who have, this is really a really popular topic for most smokers, because most smokers have certainly reached a point where they say, this is silly. I may not say it out loud, but I'm spending $100 a week coughing up brown stuff, going to funerals of people who died of lung cancer. I need to stop. A lot of smokers will face the fact, oh, it just makes sense for me to stop. But they run into that last self-deception, and it's called delaying tactics. I do need to stop someday soon. Seriously, someday. Probably not during the holidays. Probably not while things are tense at work. I need to stop, I'm serious, and they're heartfelt about it. Right? I need to quit just throwing money after cigarettes. I need to quit just throwing money after this entertainment. Maybe online gambling is really probably not the best thing for me right now. Maybe I need to quit spending so much money on this. Maybe I need to quit buying everybody lunch all the time. Maybe I need to not work 70 hours a week. Maybe it's time, it's bad holidays coming, I need the extra money. I don't know if I can. The realization that even I know it's time to change, but not quite yet. I figure surely some of the people in leadership in Jesus' day understood the truth of what he was saying, things do need to change. We do need to go that direction, just not yet. We need to do this in our own time, under our own control. And this abrupt change is too much for us. People in their private lives, people in their nearest relationships, people at their workplace, people in their churches start to get glimmers of, wow, things have really changed, and maybe we need to make adjustments, and maybe it's time to really get something going and face the realities we don't want to face. But once you've broken through my denial and I quit repressing it, and I've stopped making excuses for it, and I've stopped ignoring it by hiding from it, even so, it's still, maybe we can hang on another couple of years without doing anything really different. Maybe the world does need to change. Maybe I need to change my priorities. Maybe the church needs to change its priorities. But, maybe the classic one I heard 25 years ago, went to a workshop with Lyle Shower, who was the guru of small church at the time. He would go to this big meeting and sit down like you were sitting at the feet of a guru and just absorb everything he said. Read his books. He said the reality about small churches is that they are so insistent about just not changing anything that the mindset is essentially, I want to keep the place going exactly the way it is until it comes time for my funeral. And then the last person can lock the doors after shutting off the lights. I so much want things not to change. I so much want not to have to face realities. As if we forget, God is there because we have to change. God is there because change, happens whether we like it or not. God is there to hold us together so we can face the realities and see what we need to see. And I see that I'm running long. Let us pray. There's so much, oh God, that you would want us to see and know and to share. So many opportunities, so many blessings right before us, and yet so many things that we also must face that are not so pleasant. And we'll cling to you, and we'll look to one another to be our comfort and our guide, our encouragement, as we slowly come to terms with our own realities, and as we slowly discover what you are calling us to do in the midst of everything else that's changing. But here today, oh God, we're grateful for the things that have not changed. For we came here expecting to see you, and we have seen you. And we have shared your spirit in the bread and the cup, and we have embraced each other and found your love present once more. You have spoken to us, and we have heard you, and we have sung our songs of praise. And you've been faithful once again. Help us to know above all else, no matter what must change, no matter what realities we're escaping, that we can indeed trust you to be there, loving us. In Jesus' name.